Hey everybody, this is Mr. Merchant. In this video, we're going to be going over integer operations because some people are still struggling with adding and subtracting or multiplying and dividing integers, especially when they're negatives and positives mixed together. So I'm going to go ahead and go over this with you guys. This might look familiar. This is kind of like our key to decipher what we needed to do when it came to adding or subtracting with same signs or adding and subtracting with different signs. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and list out the rules for y'all. So when they're same signs, don't forget that we are just going to add the integers, which means we're just going to be adding up the numbers. Right? Then the second step is to keep the sign that they both have. All right? We could do an example. So let's say that we have -5 minus 7. They have the same signs. They both have a negative out in front. All right. So we're going to go ahead and add up the numbers. 7 plus 5 gives us 12. And then we're going to keep the sign that they both have. They're both negative. So that 12 is going to be negative. Negative 12. Now let's say they're both positive. If it doesn't have a sign out in front, that means that it's positive, but we could add it out in front. So it's 5 plus 7. We're going to add the integers, 12. And we're going to keep the sign that they both have, which is positive. So it's just going to stay 12. All right? But now this is where it gets tricky and some people get caught up. All right? Adding and subtracting with different signs. All right? We're going to do the opposite. We're going to subtract. We're going to subtract the integers first. And then we are going to keep the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. All right. So let's do an example. Let's say we have -5 plus 7. So we're going to subtract the integers. So we're going to find the one with the bigger absolute value, subtract it from the one that's smaller. It just makes sense, right? So we do 7 minus 5, which gives us 2. And then we're going to keep the sign of the one that has the greater absolute value. We already knew that that was 7, so it's going to stay positive. So the answer is a positive 2. Let's say we have 5 minus 7. We do the same thing. We subtract the integers. 7 minus 5 gives us 2. And then we're going to keep the sign of the one that's greater, which is 7. So that means it's going to be a -2. Right? If you're more of a visual person, this will make a lot of sense if you look at a number line, right? Let's do -5 plus 7, right? So here's 0, -5 is on this side. And if we were going to add 7, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way over to +2. And then that's going to be our answer, right? We're going to move 7 spaces, and wherever we end up, that's our answer, which is +2. All right, now let's do this one. Here's 0. We start at 5. All right, now we're subtracting 7. We're going to the left 7, and we're going to end up at -2. It just makes sense, right? Now, let's look at these ones with the same signs. If we start at -5, and we're subtracting 7, that means we're still going to the left. We're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that ends us up at negative 12. But for this next one, if we're starting at positive 5 and we're adding 7, that means we're going to the right 7, and we're going to end up at positive 12. Alright, so if you ever get stuck, you can look at a number line and it'll make a lot more sense. Alright, now we're going to get into multiplying and dividing with same signs and different signs. Alright, so I think that these rules are a lot more easier to remember because they're just straightforward to the point, but there are still some people who mix them up with adding and subtracting rules. So we have to make sure that we differentiate those and we don't mix them up. Alright, so if we are multiplying and dividing with the same signs, our answer is always positive. Our answer is always positive. Alright, so if we have 6 times 8. 6 times 8. They're both positive. So we're just going to have a positive 48. We have a negative 6 times a negative 8. It's still going to give us positive 48 because they have the same signs. Even though they're both negative, their answer is going to turn out positive. And it's the opposite for different signs. If we have different signs, our answer is always negative. Answer is always negative. So if we have negative 6 times positive 8, that's negative 48. And other way around, if we have negative 8 times positive 6, same thing, negative 48. Now the 8 is negative and the 6 is positive, but it's still going to give us the same answer. When we have one negative, one positive, answer is always going to be negative. So a student in tutorials the other day had asked me a pretty interesting question about adding and subtracting integers. They asked, how will we know what sign the answer is going to have if we know that the two numbers that we're adding and subtracting have the same sign, different signs? Like, is there a rule for that? And so that's why it sometimes gets mixed up with multiplication, right? But I told them that it just depends on how big or how small each number is, right? So if we just started out with different signs, DS stands for different signs, and we had 30 minus 30, right? Of course, we know that this is positive, so I'll add the positive sign out front. Positive 30 minus 30, that's just like saying 1 minus 1, we know is going to be 0, right? So even though those had different signs, if they have the same absolute value, then it's going to give us 0 if they have different signs. So 0 is neither positive nor negative. So in that case, our answer was just 0. Or let's say we had negative 30 plus 20. Negative 30 plus 20, if we did the rules, is different signs, so we would subtract. 30 minus 20 gives us 10, and we keep the sign of the greater absolute value, which is negative. So we had a negative 30 plus a 20, we got negative 10. But what if it was the other way around? What if the negative had a smaller absolute value and the positive had a greater absolute value? Do the rules out again. 30 minus 20 gives us 10. 30 is the greater absolute value, so it'd be positive, so we'd have positive 10. So now our answer is positive. So it all depends on how big or how small the absolute value is of the number with that particular sign. It all depends. So now if we were looking at same signs, SS is same signs, and we had negative 20 minus 30. In this case, if they're both negative, we know that we're going to be going left on the number line. So therefore, we know it's going to be negative. And we add these integers up. 20 plus 30 is 50. It's going to be negative 50. Then if we have 20 plus 30, those are both positive. We know that's going to be positive 50. So if they're both positive and we're adding, then of course it's going to go on the positive side, right? So I just kind of thought that was interesting and that I would share that with y'all. You always have to work it out and see what you're going to get. Other than that, if they have same signs, we'll know where it's going to go. But if they have different signs, you have to work it out, and it could be positive or negative. All right? Thank you so much, y'all, for watching. I hope this helped you out. Please let me know if you have any other questions. Have a great day.